Hours after my son was born, my wife's family showed up at the hospital demanding to see the baby, and the way they looked at him made my blood run cold. Then my sister-in-law leaned in and whispered one sentence that turned my marriage into a public trial. My name is Daniel. I'm 38, and I work as an IT systems analyst for a mid-sized logistics company outside Portland. I'm not the kind of guy who enjoys drama, and I've never been good at yelling matches. I'm the type who double-checks receipts, keeps backups of everything, and believes that if you stay calm long enough, the truth usually surfaces on its own. That mindset served me well at work. It did not prepare me for my wife's family. My wife, Emily, is 35. We met in a stupidly normal way, mutual friends, backyard barbecue, me pretending I wasn't impressed when she corrected my fun fact about satellites. She's sharp, warm, and stubborn in the best way. The kind of person who remembers your coffee order after hearing it once. When we got married, I knew I wasn't just marrying her. I was marrying into a family system that ran on appearances and control. Emily's parents, Mark and Linda, lived about 40 minutes away. From the outside, they were respectable. Big house, tidy lawn, neighborhood friends, holiday letters that sounded like press releases. Mark spoke like a man giving closing arguments even when he was ordering dinner. Linda collected concerns the way some people collect stamps. Then there was Emily's sister, Rachel. Rachel was the golden child in a way that was almost painful to watch. She could do no wrong even when she absolutely did wrong. She'd show up late, make a mess, borrow money, forget birthdays, and still somehow end up being the victim of every story. From the beginning, I could tell they measured people in categories: who looked right, who sounded right, who made them look right. And I never quite fit. I grew up middle class. My dad was a mechanic, my mom was a nurse. We weren't flashy, but we were solid. We talked things out. We didn't weaponize silence. In my family, if you had a problem, you said it. In Emily's family, if you had a problem, you announced it as a concern at a group dinner so everyone could watch you squirm. Still, I tried. I showed up. I helped Mark fix his printer even though he acted like it was my job. I did the polite smile when Linda asked if we were still renting. I nodded through unsolicited advice about finances, diet, and how men these days didn't lead their households properly. Linda wanted to be at every appointment. Mark insisted on discussing our plan for the baby as if he was on the decision-making committee. Rachel made jokes about how Emily would finally understand real responsibility, even though Rachel had never kept a plant alive for more than a week. We set boundaries early. We told them we'd share updates when we had them. We asked for space. We said no to Linda being in the delivery room, no matter how many times she framed it as support. And for a while it was just tense. Manageable, in the way a storm is manageable when it's still far out at sea. Then, somewhere around Emily's second trimester, the comments changed. It started with little jabs that were easy to dismiss if you didn't want to see the pattern. Linda would look at Emily's belly and say, "You're carrying high. That's interesting." Rachel would laugh and say, "Maybe the baby's going to come out looking like the mailman," like it was a harmless sitcom line. Mark would mention more than once how these days you can never be too sure, usually after a news story about paternity fraud. The first time it happened, I smiled politely. The second time, I felt my jaw tighten. The third time, I took Emily aside in the kitchen after one of their Sunday dinners and said, quietly, "Do they think you cheated on me?" Emily went pale, not because the idea was new, but because she'd been trying not to name it. "They're just weird," she said, but her voice had that defensive edge people get when they're trying to protect their family from the truth. They don't trust anyone. They always assume the worst. I wanted to tell her that anyone seemed to mostly mean me. I didn't push too hard then. Emily was pregnant, exhausted, and already dealing with enough. I didn't want to make her carry my anger too. But I started noticing details. Linda watched me with a kind of clinical suspicion. Rachel would accidentally bring up stories about DNA tests and celebrity scandals. Mark made comments about how the baby's hair might be surprising, like he was planting a seed he planned to water later. Once, while Emily was in the bathroom, Linda leaned toward me at the dinner table and said softly, "You know, Daniel, if you ever have doubts, it's better to address them early." I remember just looking at her, wondering if I'd misheard. "I don't have doubts," I said. Linda's smile didn't move her eyes. "Of course, I'm just saying, for your sake, for my sake. That's how people justify cruelty. They call it care." The closer we got to the due date, the more Emily tried to keep peace. She'd answer Linda's texts with short, polite updates. I grabbed our hospital bag. We got in the car. The whole drive, Emily stared out the window, quiet and focused. I tried to keep my voice steady as I told her she was doing great, that we were close, that everything was going to be okay. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Check-in, triage, nurses with calm voices, monitors beeping in gentle rhythms. I texted my parents a short update. Emily texted hers, even though I could tell she didn't want them there. "They'll lose it if I don't tell them," she said. "Okay," I told her, "but it doesn't mean they get to come in." She nodded, squeezed my hand and winced as another contraction hit. Hours blurred together. Emily did the hardest thing I've ever watched a person do. She gripped my hand so hard I thought my fingers might go numb. She cursed once, then apologized, then laughed weakly like she couldn't believe she was apologizing. And then, early in the morning, our son arrived. For a moment, nothing else mattered. He was small and pink and furious at being introduced to the world. His cry filled the room like a declaration. The nurse placed him on Emily's chest, and Emily's face changed, like her whole life had shifted into a new gravity. I remember touching his tiny hand and feeling something close to fear, not because I didn't want him, but because I suddenly understood how much there was to lose. We named him Noah. We'd chosen that name months earlier, imagining it in normal moments, calling him for dinner, yelling it across a playground. Hearing it said out loud in the hospital room felt surreal. Emily was exhausted but glowing in that fragile way new mothers can be. I sat beside her, staring at Noah like if I blinked he might disappear. Then Emily's phone started buzzing. Message after message. She didn't have the energy to deal with it, so I checked the notifications. Linda, Rachel, Mark. They were outside. They wanted in. We'd told the staff no visitors besides me. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. At some point a nurse came in and said politely, "There's a family downstairs insisting they need to see the baby immediately. They're being persistent." Emily's face tightened. "I can't do this right now." "You don't have to," I said. "I'll handle it." I stepped out into the hallway and called Linda, thinking a firm boundary would be the end of it. Linda answered on the first ring. "We're here." "I know," I said, keeping my voice low. "Protect Emily from mistakes." As if Emily was a child and I was the punishment. I stepped closer. "If you keep talking like that, you won't be around my son. Do you understand me?" Rachel's smile faded, and for the first time I saw something harder in her eyes. She leaned in and said quietly, "Or maybe he's not your son." It hit me like a slap. Not because it was believable, because it was deliberate. I felt that old instinct rise up, the urge to raise my voice, to demand respect, to make a scene that would force the world to acknowledge how wrong this was. But I looked down the hallway at the closed door to Emily's room and thought about Noah's tiny hand curling around Emily's finger. So I did the only thing I knew would keep me from exploding. I said, "Get out of the hospital." Rachel blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said, voice steady. "You're not welcome here. Leave." She scoffed like I was the rude one, turned and walked back toward the elevators with an exaggerated shake of her head. I thought that would be the end of it. I went back into Emily's room, sat down and told her, gently, that her family had come but I'd handled it. Emily didn't look relieved. She looked afraid. "What did they say?" she whispered. I hesitated because I didn't want to poison her first hours with Noah. But Emily knew her family. She could read the truth on my face. "Daniel," she said, "tell me." So I did. As I spoke, Emily's eyes filled with tears, not the soft, happy tears of new motherhood, but the sharp ones that come from shame and betrayal. "They're not going to stop," she said, voice cracking. "They're going to turn this into something." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to promise her it would blow over. Instead, I said, "Then we don't let them. We keep records. We stay calm. And we protect our son." Emily nodded, but I could see the conflict in her. The part of her that still wanted her parents' approval was fighting the part that knew they were crossing a line. A few hours later, while Emily slept, I stepped into the hallway again and checked my phone. There were new messages. Not from Linda directly, because Linda was smart enough to avoid putting certain things in writing when she thought it might matter. But the family group chat was active. Rachel had posted, "We're being blocked from seeing the baby. Ask yourself why." Then Mark, "If there's nothing to hide, a simple test later will clear everything." Then Linda, "We only want what's best for Emily and the child. Daniel is acting irrational." Acting irrational. Because I wouldn't let them accuse my wife of cheating hours after she gave birth. She hesitated. About the baby's identification bands. About the birth record. About, verification procedures. My stomach tightened so hard it almost hurt. They were trying to turn hospital staff into witnesses. I thanked the nurse and stepped into the hallway. This time I didn't call Linda. I went straight to the front desk and asked to speak with security. I kept my voice controlled, the way I do at work when someone is trying to argue their way into access they don't have. "I'm the father," I said. "The mother is resting. These people are causing distress and asking inappropriate questions. I need them removed from the premises." The security officer didn't look shocked. He looked tired, like he'd seen versions of this before. "Can you identify them?" he asked. I pointed. Mark and Linda were standing near the entrance. Linda with her arms crossed and her chin high. Mark staring at his phone like he was preparing notes. Rachel was a few steps back, grinning at something on her own screen. The security officer approached them, spoke quietly, and within seconds Linda's head snapped toward me. Even across the lobby I could hear her voice rise. "This is ridiculous. I am the grandmother. You can't keep us from our own blood." Blood. That word again, like it was a weapon. Mark's voice followed, deep and controlled, the kind of tone he used to sound reasonable while saying something ugly. "We have concerns. We're not leaving until we get answers." The security officer didn't care about their concerns. Hospital policy didn't bend for concerns. When he asked them to leave, Linda looked straight at me and said, loud enough for people in the waiting area to turn their heads, "If you're so confident, why won't you let us see the baby? What are you afraid of?" My face burned. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew exactly what she was doing, creating a scene, making sure strangers heard the accusation even if she never said it outright. And then Rachel decided to say it outright. She raised her voice with a little laugh like she was delivering a punchline. "Maybe he doesn't want anyone to notice the baby doesn't look like him." It got quiet for half a second. That sudden uncomfortable silence you get when a room of strangers realizes they're watching a private disaster. I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. I forced them to relax. The security officer stepped between us and repeated firmer that they needed to leave or he'd escort them out. Linda's mouth tightened. Mark's eyes narrowed. Rachel rolled her eyes dramatically. As they walked out, Linda turned one last time and said, "Emily deserves the truth, Daniel." And then the group chat. Again and again, people we barely talked to outside holidays, cousins I'd met once, an aunt who always smelled like perfume and judgment. Rachel had done exactly what I feared. She'd turned it into a public narrative. She posted, "Pray for Emily. She's being manipulated and isolated right after giving birth." Linda replied, "We just want to protect her from being trapped. She's vulnerable right now." Mark, "No man who is certain would refuse a paternity test. That's just fact." They were saying paternity test, like it was a neutral, reasonable request. Like they weren't simultaneously accusing my wife of cheating and me of being either a fool or a fraud. Emily sat on the couch, Noah asleep on her chest, reading messages with tears sliding silently down her face. "I can't believe they're doing this," she whispered. I sat beside her, careful not to jostle the baby. "They're doing it because it works for them. They think if they push hard enough, we'll fold." Emily shook her head. "My mom, she wouldn't actually think I cheated. I didn't say what I was thinking. She doesn't have to believe it to use it." Instead, I said, "Emily, listen to me. Your character isn't on trial. Their behavior is, and we're not going to beg them to stop." Emily looked at me like she wanted to believe that, like she needed to. That night, after Emily finally managed to sleep in short bursts between feedings, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and my phone beside it. I made a folder. I labeled it simply, Noah. Inside it I saved screenshots from the group chat. I saved call logs. I saved the nurse's discharge summary email. I even wrote down a timeline of what happened at the hospital while it was still fresh. The exact words Rachel said in the hallway, Linda's accusation in the lobby, Mark's concerns. I didn't know yet what we would need. I just knew we would need something. The next morning, my mom came over with soup, because that's what she does. She stepped into the house quietly, took one look at Emily's tired face, and her own expression sharpened. "What's going on?" she asked. Emily tried to smile. "Just tired." I hesitated, then told her. Not every detail, just enough. My mom listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set the soup down on the counter like she was placing it carefully to avoid shattering something. "They accused Emily," she said. "Yes." "At the hospital?" she asked. "Yes." My mom's jaw clenched. "And you didn't knock him out?" she said, meaning Mark, which was almost funny because my mom has never hit anyone in her life. "I wanted to," I admitted. She looked at me for a long moment, then said something that surprised me. Good. You didn't. Because the kind of people who do this, they want you to lose control. They want you to look guilty. That line stayed with me. They want you to look guilty. That afternoon, Emily's dad showed up at our house. Not called, not asked, just showed up. I opened the door and found Mark standing on the porch like he belonged there, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning past me into the house. "I'm here to see my daughter," he said. "She's resting," I replied. "And you weren't invited." Mark's mouth twitched like he didn't like the tone I used. "Daniel, we need to talk like adults." "We are," I said. "Adults don't show up unannounced." Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know you think you're being noble, but if that baby isn't yours, you're throwing your life away." I stared at him. There are moments when you realize someone's opinion of you is so low, you could never earn it back. Mark wasn't asking questions. He was stating a conclusion and daring me to disprove it. "Get off my porch," I said. Mark's eyes hardened. "You don't get to keep Emily from her family." "I'm not," I said. "You're doing that all by yourselves." At that moment, Emily appeared behind me in the doorway, Noah in her arms. Her hair was messy, her face pale with exhaustion, but her eyes were sharp. "Dad," she said quietly, "why are you here?" Mark's expression softened instantly like a switch had flipped. "Honey, we're worried about you." Emily didn't move. "Worried about what? Say it." Mark hesitated, like he didn't want to say the ugly thing in front of me, but also didn't want to lose control of the story. He glanced at Noah. His gaze lingered just a little too long on Noah's face. Then he said, "We just need reassurance." Emily's voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "Reassurance that I didn't cheat on my husband?" Mark's jaw tightened. "Emily, don't be dramatic." "Dramatic," Emily repeated, incredulous. "You came to my house uninvited 2 days after I gave birth because your wife and Rachel started a rumor that my baby isn't Daniel's. You harassed hospital staff. You humiliated him in public. And I'm dramatic." Mark's eyes flashed. For a second the mask slipped. "If you have nothing to hide, then do the test." There it was, the demand, the condition for peace. Emily looked down at Noah, then back at her father. "This is my son," she said, "and Daniel is his father." Mark's voice dropped into that cold, managerial tone. "Then prove it." I felt Emily's hand tighten around Noah. I stepped forward slightly, not to threaten, just to anchor her. "We're not doing anything because you demand it," I said. "You don't control our family." Mark looked at me with open contempt now. "You think you can just what? Cut us off, after everything we've done for Emily?" Emily's laugh was short and bitter. "Everything you've done for me? You mean the way you always make me pay for Rachel's mistakes? The way Mom treats me like I'm her project? The way you both treat my marriage like it's something you can audit?" Mark's face reddened. "Don't bring Rachel into this." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Rachel brought herself into this. She said out loud that my baby might not be Daniel's. She told people to pray for me, like I'm some kind of hostage." Mark's expression shifted again, and I could see him recalculating. The part of him that cared about reputation was realizing this was getting louder than he wanted. He tried another approach. "Emily, sweetheart, we're family. This doesn't have to be a war." Emily stared at him. "Then stop attacking my husband." Mark's eyes flicked to me again, and I saw it, the decision. If he couldn't control Emily with pressure, he'd try to control her with fear. His voice went sharp. "If you refuse the test, then you're choosing him over us." Emily didn't blink. "Yes," she said. Mark's face went still, like he wasn't used to that answer. Then he did something I didn't expect. He stepped back, pointed at me, and said, "Get out." For a second I honestly thought I'd misheard. "This is our daughter's home," he continued, voice rising. "You don't get to poison her against us. You don't get to isolate her. Pack your things and leave. Emily and the baby will come stay with us until we sort this out." Emily's mouth fell open. "Dad." Mark cut her off. "I'm not arguing. Either he leaves, or you're not welcome in this family." Silence filled the porch. I could hear a car drive by on our street. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. The normal world kept moving while mine narrowed down to this ridiculous, terrifying moment. Mark had come to my house and tried to evict me from my own life. I looked at Emily. Her eyes were wet, but her face was set, and in that moment I made a choice that felt almost unnatural for me. I didn't argue with Mark. I didn't shout. I didn't defend myself. I simply said, "Okay." Mark blinked, caught off guard. "Okay." I nodded once. "Okay, we'll do this properly." Emily turned her head sharply toward me. "Daniel, I kept my voice calm, but I made sure Emily heard the certainty underneath it. I'm not leaving, I said, still looking at Mark. But I'm also not going to fight you on your terms. If you want proof, we'll get proof. Official. Documented. No backroom tests. No family friends. No my cousin knows a guy. A real lab. Chain of custody. And when it comes back, you're going to answer for what you've done. Mark's expression flickered, something like satisfaction mixed with suspicion. Linda's car turned onto our street at that exact moment, like she'd been circling the neighborhood waiting for Mark's signal. And I realized they hadn't come here for a conversation. They'd come here to force a surrender. But I wasn't surrendering. I was setting a trap made of paperwork, timestamps, and the one thing they couldn't talk their way out of, the truth. Linda's SUV rolled to a stop like she was arriving at a courtroom, not my driveway. She got out with purpose, sunglasses on even though the sky was gray, and walked up the path without waiting to be invited. Mark didn't look at her like a husband greeting his wife. He looked at her like backup arriving. Linda took one glance at Emily holding Noah, then at me, and her lips pressed into a thin line. So, she said, you finally agreed to do the test. Emily's voice came out strained. Mom, what are you doing here? Linda ignored the question. If you'd just listened at the hospital, we wouldn't have had to come to this. The way she said this, like it was my fault they'd harassed us, made something hot flash behind my eyes. I swallowed it down. Linda, I said, get off our property. She smiled like she'd expected that. See? Hostile. Defensive. Exactly what I said. Mark held up a hand like he was moderating. Enough. We're not here to argue. Emily's shoulders rose and fell with a controlled breath. Then leave. Linda stepped closer, softening her tone in that fake maternal way. Honey, I'm worried about you. You're postpartum. You're emotional. You don't understand what you're protecting. Emily's face hardened. I'm protecting my husband. Linda's eyes flicked to Noah again. And the baby. That word baby, like she couldn't even say his name, like she wasn't sure she wanted to claim him yet. I'd had enough of the porch theater. I nodded once, more to myself than anyone. We're doing the test, I said, not because you demand it, because your accusation is now documented and public, and I'm ending it with documented truth. Mark's eyebrows lifted. Fine. When? Soon, I said. But you don't get access to my son, and you don't get to be involved in the process. You've already proven you can't be trusted. Linda's voice sharpened. You can't keep a grandmother from her grandchild. I can, I said evenly. Watch me. For a moment Linda looked like she might actually scream, but then she caught herself, glanced toward the street, and lowered her voice. Emily, she said, if Daniel is so confident, he should have no problem doing this quickly. Today. Tomorrow. Emily looked at me, panicked and exhausted at the same time. Noah shifted in her arms and let out a small sound, half sigh, half protest. Emily rocked him gently. We're not doing anything today, Emily said. We're going inside. Linda stepped into the doorway as if she had the right. I moved sideways to block her without touching her. Don't, I warned. Mark's voice dropped. Daniel, don't make this uglier. I stared at him. You already did. Emily turned and walked back into the house. I followed and shut the door behind us. Through the glass I saw Linda's mouth moving. I didn't need to hear it to know what she was saying. Emily stood in the living room, swaying slightly with Noah. Her eyes were bright with anger and tears she refused to let fall. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't have them destroying us when he's... I stepped closer and spoke softly so I wouldn't startle Noah. You don't have to do anything except heal and take care of him. I'll handle the rest. Emily let out a shaky breath. They're going to tell everyone I'm a liar. Then we'll show everyone they're liars, I said. That night, after Emily finally managed a longer stretch of sleep, I made calls. First, I called our pediatrician's office and asked carefully what they could and couldn't do regarding paternity testing. They referred me to accredited labs and told me gently that any DNA test we did needed to be done correctly if it was going to shut down a rumor. Then I called a lab I recognized from corporate background checks, one of the national accredited companies with strict chain of custody procedures. I wasn't looking for the fastest option. I was looking for the one that couldn't be questioned. The woman on the phone explained it like she'd done it 1,000 times. You'll need government-issued ID, she said. The child will need to be present. We'll take cheek swabs from both. We verify identity, document the process, and the samples are sealed and tracked. What about the mother? I asked. Not required for a paternity test, she said. But she can be present. Emily would be present, not because the lab needed her there, because I needed her to see, with her own eyes, that this was real, official, and untouchable by her family's manipulation. I scheduled the earliest appointment they had, the following afternoon. Then I did something else I never thought I'd do. I emailed my HR manager. I kept it vague: family situation, potential harassment, may affect my availability. In my job, I handle access and security. I know how quickly a personal smear can leak into a professional environment if someone is determined enough. And Mark was exactly the type of man who would try to quietly ask questions about me at work to build his narrative. When I hit send, I felt a strange mix of shame and clarity. Shame that I had to do this at all. Clarity that I was done pretending this was normal. The next morning, the group chat exploded again. Rachel had posted a screenshot of a message, one she claimed was from a hospital nurse friend, saying sometimes babies get switched at birth and you can never be too careful. It was ridiculous. It was also dangerous because people believe ridiculous things when they want an excuse to judge. Linda chimed in. Exactly. We're only asking for certainty. Mark, Daniel agreed to the test. Let's see if he keeps his word. They made it sound like I was the one on trial, and they were benevolent judges granting me a chance to prove myself. I didn't reply. I screenshotted everything and added it to the folder. Emily saw the messages later and started shaking, not from cold but from adrenaline. They're saying I let him isolate me, she whispered. My aunt just messaged me asking if I'm safe. I took her phone gently and set it face down. Then we're going quiet, no responses, no engagement. You don't owe them your nervous system. Emily looked like she wanted to argue, like she was afraid silence would make the rumors worse. But then Noah stirred, and she refocused on him. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. I opened it and found Rachel standing there with a small gift bag and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Truce, she said sweetly. Can I come in? I brought something for the baby. Behind her, in the driver's seat of a parked car, I saw Linda watching through the windshield like a security camera. I kept my face blank. No. Rachel blinked. Daniel, come on. Emily and I need to talk. Emily doesn't need anything from you, I said. And you don't get to use gifts as a pass. Rachel's smile tightened. You're really going to keep doing this. You're making yourself look worse. I leaned closer, not threatening, just firm. You already accused my wife of cheating. You already spread it to the family. There is no worse you can accuse us of that you haven't tried. Rachel's eyes flicked past me into the hallway. Emily, I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door closed behind me, blocking her line of sight. Leave. Rachel's voice dropped, losing the sweetness. You know what's funny? If that baby is yours, you could have just done a quick test and shut us up. But you made it a whole thing. I stared at her. You made it a whole thing. At the hospital. In front of strangers. In writing. Rachel scoffed. So now you're collecting evidence. You think you're going to sue us or something? I didn't answer. I didn't want to give her information. People like Rachel treat information like ammo. She lifted the gift bag. Just take it. No, I said again. Rachel's eyes flashed. Fine, but when the test comes back and you're wrong, don't expect us to be gentle. My stomach flipped. Not because I believed her, but because of the confidence with which she said it. Like she wanted the outcome to be devastating so she could enjoy it. Get off my property, I repeated. Rachel turned sharply, marched down the steps, and as she passed Linda's car, she tapped the window like a signal. Linda started the engine, and they drove off. Emily came into the hallway behind me, Noah against her shoulder. What did she want? She asked quietly. To get inside, I said. To push you. To make you react. Emily's mouth trembled. I hate that my own sister. I took a breath. I know. Emily looked at me for a long moment. Daniel, what if they keep doing this even after the test? That question landed heavier than anything else, because it wasn't really about the test. It was about whether Emily could accept that her family might never stop trying to control her life. I spoke carefully. Then we decide what kind of access they have to us, and to him, based on their behavior, not on their titles. Emily nodded slowly, and I watched her grief and anger mix into something sturdier. That afternoon we drove to the lab. Emily sat in the passenger seat, Noah in his car seat behind her, bundled and impossibly small. I kept both hands on the steering wheel, focusing on the road because if I let my thoughts loose, they'd run straight into rage. At the lab, the environment was sterile and calm. No family drama, no opinions, no raised voices, just forms, IDs, and procedures. We checked in. I handed over my driver's license. Emily handed over hers. The lab tech verified everything, scanned documents, and printed labels with barcodes. Then she turned to Noah. "Hello there," she said softly, like she knew she was stepping into something sacred. She verified his identity band information from the hospital discharge papers. She asked for the hospital name and birth date. She documented everything, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt since the birth. Control. Not control over people, control over the narrative, control over what was true and what could be proven. The tech took the swabs, quick, gentle strokes inside Noah's tiny cheek, then mine. She sealed the samples in tamper-evident packaging. She had me initial across the seal. She had Emily sign as a witness. "Results are typically available in 3 to 5 business days," she said. "We can send them via secure portal and email notification." "Do that," I said. When we walked back to the car, Emily looked like she might collapse from the emotional whiplash of it all. In the parking lot, she leaned against the side of the car and whispered, "I can't believe we had to do that." I adjusted Noah's blanket, making sure his face was clear. "We didn't have to," I said. "They forced it. Now they live with what they forced." Emily's eyes filled. "I keep thinking about the hospital, about how happy I was, and then they tried to poison it," I finished. Emily nodded. "I'm ashamed." "No," I said quickly, "don't be ashamed, they should be." We drove home in silence. That night the harassment shifted again. Instead of the family group chat, I started getting private messages from people I barely knew. An uncle I'd met twice. "Daniel, man to man, just get the test, no shame." A cousin, "We're praying for you." A friend of Linda's, someone I'd never even texted before. "You can't keep a child from their grandparents." They spoke like I'd already done something wrong, like the accusation was truth, and I was the obstacle to peace. I didn't respond. I kept collecting. Emily got a message from her aunt, the same one who asked if she was safe. This time it said, "If Daniel has nothing to hide, why is he being so controlling?" Emily read it out loud, then stared at the wall like she didn't recognize her own family. "I'm not even a person to them," she said. "I'm just a role." I sat beside her. "They're trying to rewrite reality so that their cruelty becomes concern and our boundaries become control." Emily looked at me, eyes red. "How do you know all this?" I exhaled slowly. "Because I work with systems, and this is a system. It's not about the baby, it's about power." Emily swallowed. "What do we do when the results come back?" "We decide what the truth costs them," I said. I didn't mean money. I meant access, reputation, the comfort of pretending they were good people. The next day, Mark called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was calm, almost polite. "Daniel, just checking in. We're waiting. Emily's mother is heartbroken. Let's resolve this like adults." Heartbroken, like she was the victim of her own accusation. An hour later, Linda called Emily. Emily stared at the phone, then handed it to me without a word. I didn't answer. I listened to the voicemail. Linda was crying, not real grief, but performance grief. "Emily, please, call me. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm terrified for you. That man is tearing you away from us." Emily's hands shook as she took her phone back. "She's making it sound like you're abusive." "That's the next stage," I said quietly. Emily looked horrified. "Do you think she'd actually accuse you of that?" I didn't want to scare her, but I also wasn't going to lie. "I think she'll say whatever she needs to say to avoid admitting she was wrong." That night I opened the secure portal again. Even though I knew the results wouldn't be there yet, it still said processing. But there was an update. The lab had received the samples and logged them. A small, boring confirmation that felt like oxygen. I showed Emily. "They have it," I said. "It's moving." Emily nodded, but her face was tight. 3 to 5 business days, she murmured. "I don't know if I can handle 5 more days of this." I reached for her hand, one day at a time. On the 3rd day, something happened that made my stomach turn colder than it had since the hospital. Emily's cousin, one of the more reasonable ones, texted her privately. "Please don't freak out," the message began. "But Aunt Linda is telling people the baby might not even be yours, that there was a switch at the hospital. She's saying she wants to request the hospital footage." Emily read it twice, like her brain refused to accept it. Then she looked at me and whispered, "They're saying I'm not even his mom." I felt my pulse in my throat, because now it wasn't just an attack on me, it was an attack on the reality of Emily's motherhood, and it told me something terrifyingly clear. They weren't going to stop at one lie. They were going to keep inventing new ones until they found one that stuck. I opened my laptop again and started a new folder inside Noah. I named it hospital. If Linda wanted to drag the hospital into it, fine. We would have records too. And as I clicked through the discharge paperwork, the appointment summaries, the timestamps, I realized there was only one way out of this that would end it permanently. Not arguing, not pleading, not moving on. Proof, layered on proof, until the story they built collapsed under its own weight. When I checked the portal one more time before bed, the status had changed again. Processing, final review. I stared at those words for a long time, feeling the ground shift under everything. Because if the results were that close, then the next message we received could either end the nightmare or ignite an even bigger one. I barely slept that night. Every time Noah made a sound, Emily woke up, and every time Emily woke up, I did too. Half from instinct, half from the pressure sitting on my chest like a weight. At 6:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not a call, an email notification. Your test results are now available. For a second, I just stared at the screen like my brain couldn't process it. My thumb hovered over the link. I felt the same irrational fear you feel right before opening an exam grade, even when you know you studied, even when you know the truth, because the test wasn't really about genetics. It was about whether reality still mattered. I slid out of bed, walked into the hallway, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. The morning light made everything look too normal for what we'd been living through. I logged into the secure portal. 2-factor code. Password, the whole locked door ritual. Then the PDF appeared. I opened it. The first thing I saw was the lab's letterhead, the date, my name, Noah's identifying information, the case number, and a line that made my throat go tight. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. I didn't breathe for a moment. I read it again, then again, slower, 99.999%. Not likely, not probably, not we think so. A wall, a dead end to their accusation. My shoulders slumped, and I didn't even realize how tense I'd been until the tension started leaving me. It felt like someone turned off a loud machine in the background. I heard Noah fuss in the bedroom. Emily's voice followed, quiet and exhausted. I stood up and walked back in, holding the laptop like it was fragile. Emily was sitting up against the pillows, hair messy, Noah against her chest. She looked at my face and immediately went rigid. "Is it?" she started. I didn't make her finish. I stepped closer, turned the screen toward her, and pointed to the line. Emily stared at it. Her eyes moved across the page like she didn't trust her own reading. Then her mouth opened slightly, and a sound came out, half laugh, half sob. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Daniel." She started crying, quiet at first, trying not to shake Noah. Tears slid down her cheeks and disappeared into the fabric of his blanket. I felt my own eyes sting, but I kept my voice steady. "He's mine," I said. "He's ours. It's official." Emily looked down at Noah like she was seeing him again for the first time, like the world had tried to steal something from her, and she was reclaiming it with both hands. "I hate that we needed paper for this," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but now we have it." Emily wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her expression shifted from relief to something sharper. "What do we do now?" she asked. That was the question I'd been building toward for days. Because the test wasn't the finish line. It was the lever. "We do this correctly," I said. "We don't just show them and hope they behave. We set terms." Emily's brow furrowed. "Terms?" I nodded. "They accused you. Publicly. They tried to throw me out of my own house. They implied I'm controlling and abusive. They even floated that the baby might not be yours." Emily flinched at that last part. "So," I continued, "we're not handing them this result like a gift. We're going to use it to draw a boundary so clear they can't pretend they didn't see it." Emily stared at the screen again, then looked at me with something like fear mixed with resolve. "They'll say it's fake. Let them," I said. "We'll have the certified copy too." I went back to the kitchen and called the lab. "I need a certified hard copy," I told them, "and I want it mailed to our address. Sealed. Any verification steps you offer, do them." The woman's tone stayed professional. "We can provide a notarized copy and verification contact information." "Do that," I said. After that call, I started the second part of the plan. Because Linda's new angle, the hospital switch, wasn't just nasty. It was reckless. Hospitals don't play with that kind of accusation, and neither would I. I called the hospital's medical records department and requested the documentation related to Noah's birth, the newborn identification band log, the matching mother-baby bracelet documentation, the delivery record, and the nursing notes that confirmed rooming in and identity verification. The woman on the phone explained the process, what required a signed release, what could be delivered electronically, what timeframes applied. I kept my tone polite and calm, but inside I was burning. Not because I needed the records to believe Emily, because I needed them to bury Linda's lie before she spread it further. When I hung up, I opened the hospital folder and started organizing. Timeline, calls, messages, screenshots. Then I made a new document titled Boundaries. It felt weird writing down my life like a policy memo. But when you're dealing with people who rewrite history, written terms are reality anchors. I listed what would be required before any contact resumed. 1. A written apology from Linda, Mark, and Rachel to both of us. 2. A written retraction in the family group chat. 3. Agreement to no visits without invitation. 4. No posting about us or Noah online at all. 5. Any future accusations mean immediate no contact. I didn't know yet if they'd accept it, but for the first time in days, I didn't care, because their acceptance wasn't the goal. Our peace was. By lunchtime, Emily had regained some color in her face. She was still exhausted, still healing, but the frantic edge was gone. Then her phone buzzed again. Mark. Emily stared at the name on the screen like it was a threat. She looked at me. Do we answer? I thought for a second. Put it on speaker. Short. Emily answered. Dad. Mark's voice came through, overly calm. Emily, how are you feeling? Emily didn't take the bait. What do you want? A pause. Then, we heard you did the test. Of course they heard. Nothing stayed private in that family. Emily's hand tightened around the phone. Yes. Mark exhaled like he was the one who'd been under stress. Good. So what were the results? Emily glanced at me. I shook my head slightly. We're not discussing it on the phone, Emily said. Mark's tone cooled. Why not? If everything is fine, this ends today. Emily's voice rose. It doesn't end today. You made sure of that. Mark's voice sharpened just a notch. Emily, be reasonable. Your mother is beside herself. Emily let out a bitter laugh. My mother is beside herself because she accused me of cheating and got caught. Silence. Then Mark said, Daniel is influencing you. My jaw clenched. Emily's voice dropped into something steady and dangerous. No, Daniel is the only person who protected me. You and Mom tried to humiliate us when I was bleeding in a hospital bed. Mark's breathing changed. Annoyance, anger, something prideful. You're going to show us the report. Emily looked at Noah, then said, Not until you apologize. Mark scoffed. Apologize? For being concerned? Emily's face went still. Then no. Mark's voice rose. Emily. Emily ended the call. For a moment she stared at the dark screen. Then she whispered, I just hung up on my father. I sat beside her. Good. Emily swallowed. He's going to tell Mom you're controlling me. I know, I said. And we're going to keep not reacting. That afternoon, the group chat started again, like clockwork. Rachel, so did he finally do it? Or are we still being isolated? Linda, all we want is truth. Mark, we will see the report today. Emily read the messages, and I saw the old reflex in her. The need to explain, to defend, to make people understand. I touched her arm gently. Not yet. Emily looked at me. Why not? We have it. Because if we post it now, I said, they'll pivot. They'll say it's photoshopped. They'll demand a second test. They'll claim the lab is a scam. They'll refuse to apologize and act like the report was always the plan. Emily's eyes narrowed. So what do? We wait until we have everything, I said. DNA report, certified copy on the way, hospital documentation in progress, and the screenshots of them accusing you of cheating in a hospital switch. Then we post once. One message, one drop, no arguing. Emily stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. That night, I got a private message from Emily's aunt, the one who'd asked if she was safe. I'm not taking sides, she wrote, but your mother is very upset. She says Daniel forced you into this test and won't show the results. Are you all right? Emily's hands trembled as she typed back. I'm safe. Daniel did not force anything. Please stop repeating what Mom says. Then she paused, looked at me, and said quietly, I hate that I have to say I'm safe. I hated it too. But I also knew something important. Linda had officially crossed into a dangerous kind of narrative. Once someone hints at abuse, even vaguely, it contaminates everything. It isolates you. It makes people treat your boundaries as suspect. So I did one more thing. I called a family law office the next morning, not to file anything immediately, just to ask what our options were if harassment escalated, what documentation mattered, and how to protect ourselves if they tried something drastic like showing up, demanding the baby, or making false reports. The attorney's assistant scheduled a brief consultation. The lawyer didn't sound alarmist. He sounded like a man who'd seen too many families destroy themselves over ego. "Keep records," he told me. "Do not engage emotionally. If you share the results, do it in writing and keep it factual. If the harassment continues, you can consider a cease and desist. Also, if they're spreading claims of abuse, document that carefully." When I hung up, my skin felt cold, because hearing it said plainly, abuse allegations made it real in a way that made my stomach sink. Emily noticed my face. "What did he say?" I told her. Not to scare her, but because I wasn't going to keep her in the dark like her family tried to. Emily listened, then nodded slowly. "My mom would rather destroy you than admit she was wrong." I didn't correct her, because she was right. By day's end, the hospital portal sent an email. "Your records request is being processed." Not immediate, not fast, but moving. Then late that evening, Noah finally fell into a deeper sleep, and Emily and I sat together on the couch, both of us too tired to even turn on the TV. The house was dim, the kind of quiet that feels sacred when you've been in chaos. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. "When we post it," she said, "they're going to explode." "Yes," I replied. "And then what?" she asked. I looked down the hallway toward Noah's room and felt something solid settle inside me. "Then we decide who gets to be in his life," I said. "People who love him don't try to poison his parents." Emily swallowed hard. "I'm scared they'll show up." "They might," I said, "so we'll be ready." The next morning, the certified copy shipping confirmation arrived from the lab. A tracking number, a delivery estimate. Another boring, beautiful piece of reality. And then, as if on cue, Linda sent Emily a voice note. Emily didn't want to listen. Her thumb hovered over it like it might burn her. I said, "Play it, we save it." Emily hit play. Linda's voice filled the room, thick with tears and righteousness. "Emily, sweetheart, please. You're being stubborn. You're letting Daniel turn you against us. If you have the report, show it. If you don't, just admit it. And if you do, then you need to come home. Not his home. Your home. With us. Where you're safe." Emily's face drained of color. "Not his home. Your home. With us." It wasn't just an accusation anymore. It was an attempted removal. A claim of ownership over Emily and Noah. Emily turned to me, eyes wide. "She's telling me to leave you." I nodded slowly. "And that's why we don't negotiate. We end it." That afternoon, Mark texted me directly for the first time since the porch incident. "Family meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Our house. Bring the report. Emily needs to be with her family." "No, please. No, can we talk?" "Just a summons." I showed Emily. Emily stared at it, then looked at me with a mix of anger and something like mourning. "They're not going to apologize," she said. "They're going to demand." I typed back before Emily could talk herself into going alone. "We will not attend a meeting at your house. All communication in writing. Apology and retraction first. Then we can discuss next steps." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Mark replied, "If you refuse, you're proving our concerns." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the folder again and scrolled through the screenshots. Rachel's hospital comments, Linda's concern language, Mark's "no man who is certain" line, and now Linda's voice note telling Emily to come home to be safe. Then I checked the hospital request status one more time. Still processing, but close, and I realized the real confrontation wasn't going to happen in Mark's living room at 7 p.m. It was going to happen where they'd chosen to attack us in the first place, in the family group chat, in front of their audience, with documents they couldn't talk over. Emily looked at me and said quietly, "When the hospital records come in, we do it." I nodded. "One message," I said. "Then we go silent, and whatever they do after that, we respond with consequences, not arguments." Emily's eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't look helpless. They looked like release. "Okay," she whispered. "One message." And as she said it, my phone buzzed, another email from the hospital portal. Subject line, "Medical records available for download." I stared at it, feeling the moment click into place, because now we weren't waiting anymore. Now we were ready. I clicked the hospital email with hands that were steadier than I felt. The portal asked me to verify my identity again. Another code, another login, another layer of "this is real." Then the download page loaded, a list of documents with dates, timestamps, and clinical names that looked boring until you realized what they represented. Reality. Recorded. I downloaded everything. Newborn identification band assignment log. Mother-baby matching verification. Delivery summary. Nursing notes. Discharge summary. Even the page that documented the routine checks. Who verified the bands when and how often. I opened the newborn ID verification first and scrolled until I found the section I needed. Matching bracelet numbers for Emily and Noah. Confirmed and documented. Multiple entries. Different staff initials. Times that lined up with our memories of those blurry hours. Then I opened the nursing notes. There it was too. Routine identity checks. Infant rooming in with mother. Confirmations that the baby remained with Emily. And the standardized language hospitals used to prevent exactly the kind of accusation Linda was spreading. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick. Because someone had taken one of the most vulnerable moments of Emily's life and tried to turn it into a suspicion game. They'd forced us to pull hospital records like we were defending ourselves in a criminal case. Emily came into the kitchen, Noah tucked against her shoulder. She looked at my face and knew. "You got them," she said quietly. I nodded and turned the laptop toward her. Emily read slowly at first, then faster. Her lips parted. Her eyes narrowed like she was seeing her mother's lie as something physical, something you could finally grab and throw away. "They really said I might not be his mom," she whispered. I reached out and steadied the screen. "And now we can show without emotion, without yelling, without debate that they were lying." Emily swallowed hard. "Do we post everything?" "No," I said. "We post enough. We keep the rest in case we need it." She nodded once, and I saw her shoulders square. Not with anger. Something cleaner. Decision. We waited until that afternoon, not because we needed more time, but because we wanted one thing: calm. Noah fed. Emily rested. Our minds clear enough to write without sounding defensive. Then we sat together on the couch. Emily held Noah. I held my phone. We opened the family group chat. The last messages were still sitting there like a pile of garbage no one wanted to pick up. Rachel, still waiting on the truth. Linda, all we want is certainty. Mark, bring the report tonight. Emily looked at me. "One message," she repeated, like a vow. "One message," I agreed. I typed slowly, carefully, like I was writing a statement for a record. "Hi everyone. We're addressing this once. Noah is Daniel's biological son. The accredited lab report shows 99.9999% probability of paternity. Also, the hospital records confirm mother-baby ID bands were matched and verified repeatedly, and Noah was not switched. The accusations made by Linda, Mark, and Rachel were false and deeply harmful. We are requesting 1. A written apology to both of us, and 2. A written retraction in this group chat. Until that happens, there will be no contact and no visits. We will not argue about this further." Then I attached 3 images. 1. A screenshot of the DNA report section with the probability line, case number visible, sensitive ID info covered. 2. A screenshot of the hospital ID verification page showing matching bracelet numbers and timestamps, again covering sensitive details. 3. A collage of their own messages. Rachel's doesn't look like him. Mark's no man who is certain. Linda's safe at home with us, all in their words, time-stamped. Emily read it before I sent. Her eyes glistened. She nodded once. I hit send. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the chat exploded so fast it was hard to follow. First came silence from the people who had been loudest, like they were trying to decide whether ignoring the truth would make it go away. Then a cousin wrote, "Wait, you said 99.999%? Someone else. So why did you guys say it wasn't his?" Emily's aunt, same one who asked if she was safe, typed, "Linda, Mark, please explain yourselves." Rachel responded first. "Okay, wow, so dramatic. We were just trying to protect Emily." Linda jumped in immediately. "I cannot believe you would do this publicly, Emily. After everything, you're humiliating your own mother." That line, humiliating your own mother, was almost impressive in its audacity. Mark tried a different angle. "This could have been handled privately, a family meeting. Instead, you chose to make us look bad." Emily stared at the screen and let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "They still can't say I'm sorry." I felt something settle in me, an odd calm, like the fight had ended because the truth had done its job. I didn't respond. I had promised one message. The rest would be consequences. But the group wasn't done. One of Emily's cousins, the blunt one, wrote, "You made yourselves look bad. You accused her right after she gave birth." Another relative, Linda, you literally said the baby might not be hers. That's insane. Then unexpectedly, Rachel's husband wrote, Rachel, stop. This isn't okay. That was the first crack that mattered. Because Rachel always performed for the family. But when her own house started hearing the truth, the performance stopped being fun. Rachel typed, wow. So everyone's against us now. Fine. Emily always hated me anyway. Emily's fingers tightened around Noah's blanket. I never hated her, she whispered. I just wanted her to stop. Linda wrote, Emily, you are postpartum and not thinking clearly. Daniel is turning you against us. And that was it. The same narrative again. The same accusation. The same attempt to frame our boundaries as abuse. I took a screenshot. Then I muted the chat. Emily looked at me, breath shaking. Are we really doing no contact? I didn't answer with anger. I answered with certainty. Yes, I said. At least until they do what we asked. And if they keep pushing this safe story, it becomes permanent. Emily stared down at Noah. He blinked slowly, unaware that his existence had just detonated a family's lies. I feel guilty, Emily admitted, voice small. I shook my head. That's the conditioning. They trained you to feel guilty whenever you don't obey. Emily nodded, tears spilling now. I don't want Noah growing up in that. Then he won't, I said. That evening, Mark showed up again. Not alone. Linda and Rachel were with him, standing at the edge of our driveway like they were afraid to step onto the porch without permission. Mark knocked anyway, like he still believed knocking meant entitlement. I opened the door and stepped outside, closing it behind me. Mark's face was tight. Linda's eyes were puffy like she'd been crying, but I didn't trust the reason. Rachel looked furious, less like someone ashamed and more like someone caught. We need to talk, Mark said. Not here, I replied. Not like this. Linda took a step forward. Emily shouldn't be reading those comments. You're stressing her out. I kept my voice level. You stressed her out. You accused her of cheating. You accused the hospital of switching her baby. You told people she wasn't safe. Rachel snapped. Because you are isolating her. I didn't react. I just looked at her until she got uncomfortable. Then I said, you have two options. You can apologize in writing and retract what you said. Or you can leave. Mark's jaw flexed. Daniel, you can't dictate terms. Yes, I said. I can. This is my home. Linda's voice rose. We're family. Family doesn't do what you did, I answered. Rachel scoffed. You think you won because of a piece of paper? I almost laughed at how perfectly she revealed herself. It's not a piece of paper, I said. It's reality, and you tried to destroy it. Mark tried to step closer, but I held up a hand. Stop. You're not coming inside. Linda's eyes flashed. Then Emily can come outside. I turned my head slightly and called. Not loudly. Just enough. Emily? Emily appeared behind the glass of the front door, Noah in her arms. She didn't open it. She just looked at them through the window like she was finally seeing them clearly. Linda's face softened instantly into performance mom. She pressed a hand to her chest. Oh, sweetheart. Emily didn't move. Mark lifted his voice toward the door. Emily, you're making a huge mistake. Emily opened the door a crack but stayed inside, keeping Noah close. No, Emily said. And her voice didn't shake this time. The mistake was trusting you with my life. Linda's eyes filled again. We were worried, Emily cut her off. You weren't worried. You were cruel. You wanted control. And when Daniel didn't break, you tried to make me doubt myself. Rachel's mouth opened, ready to fire back, but Emily kept going. You don't get to call me postpartum and irrational because you got caught, she said. You don't get to rewrite what you did. Mark's face reddened. Emily. Emily raised her hand. Stop. If you want to be in Noah's life, you will apologize. In writing, you will retract what you said to the family. And if you ever accuse Daniel of hurting me again, you will never see us again. Linda's voice went thin. You would keep my grandchild from me. Emily stared at her mother for a long moment. Then she said the sentence I think she'd been building toward her whole life. If you want a relationship, you will treat us like human beings, she said. Not property. Silence. Mark's eyes moved between us like he couldn't believe he'd lost the script. Linda looked like she might collapse, not from sorrow but from the shock of being told no. Rachel muttered, "This is insane." I pointed toward the driveway. "Leave." Mark glared. "We are not done." "Yes," I said, "we are." They stood there another second as if waiting for the world to correct itself and put them back in charge. It didn't. They walked back to their car. Over the next 2 days, the social consequences unfolded without us lifting a finger. Emily's aunt called Emily privately and apologized for repeating Linda's safe narrative. A cousin told Emily, quietly, that people were furious at Linda for the hospital switch rumor. Rachel's husband texted me, awkward and direct. "I'm sorry. This got out of control. I didn't know she was saying those things." Linda didn't send an apology, not at first. Instead, she tried to salvage reputation, messaging relatives that we were overreacting and that she was heartbroken. But something had changed. Because now everyone had the documents, the dates, the proof, the screenshots. Her story couldn't breathe anymore. On the 3rd day, we received an email notification. The lab's certified hard copy had been delivered. I placed it in a folder with our other records like you'd file a deed or a passport. Then Emily's phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "I apologize for how things were handled. We should not have made assumptions. Linda is very emotional. Please allow us to move forward." Emily read it and looked at me. "That's not an apology." "No," I said. "That's a negotiation." Emily typed back with one hand while rocking Noah with the other. "Dad, this is not sufficient. You accused me of cheating, and Daniel of not being the father. Mom and Rachel humiliated him at the hospital. You tried to remove him from our home. We asked for a written apology and a retraction in the group chat. If you're not willing to do that, we will remain no contact." Then she set the phone down. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. We didn't get a proper apology from Linda or Rachel that week, and that told us everything we needed to know. Because the truth is, sometimes the justice isn't watching the other person cry and admit they were wrong. Sometimes justice is realizing you don't need their agreement to protect your family. A month later, when the chaos had quieted, Emily and I sat at the kitchen table with Noah sleeping in his bassinet nearby. We were tired in a normal way now. New parent tired, not war tired. Emily traced a finger along the edge of her mug and said softly, "I thought proving the truth would make them love me correctly." I looked at her. "Me too." Emily blinked back tears. "But it didn't." "No," I said. "It just showed who they are." Emily nodded slowly. "And who we are. That was the part that mattered. We didn't win because a report said 99.9999%. We won because we didn't let a lie become our life. We chose calm. We chose evidence. We chose boundaries. We chose our son. And if there's one thing I learned from all of it, it's this. When someone tries to shame you in public, they're counting on you to panic in public. Don't. Stay steady. Document everything. Let the truth be boring and undeniable. And when it finally arrives, don't use it to start a bigger fight. Use it to build a better wall. Because the people who truly love you won't demand proof of your dignity. They'll protect it.